Start 14th chapter of the book of Tehillim begins begins with an interesting opening. Lamnatseach David. So write a psalm to David, of David. Amar Naval Bilibo Ein Elohim. Hishchitu Hitivu Alila Ein Oseh Tov. So Naval said in his heart, there is no God. They acted corruptly. They practiced abomination. And yet nothing happens. Nobody does good and God doesn't do anything. Who is this Naval? So the word Naval is a familiar word for us. It means a bad person, an evil person, a lecherous person, fill in whatever sort of four-letter word you want or whatever. It's a description that's used at times. It's a description both used in the Bible. It's a description used later in the Rishonim, most well-known by Nachmanides, the Ramban, who talks about a Naval B'Rshut Torah, a gluttonous person who manages to officially not do anything prohibited, but acts in a gluttonous fashion with the amount of wine and meat and that they drink. Naval is also the name of a person during the lifetime of King David. Naval is somebody who's very rude to King David. David had given protection, it sounds kind of mafioso, to Naval's men in the who were shepherds. And then when David came to ask for payment, David sent his men. Naval said, who is this man, this dog who has rebelled against his master? Naval didn't want to pay David anything. David was ready, at the 20th chapter of Shmuel Aleph, David was ready to kill Naval and all of the men in his family, and Abigail interceded and came and met with David and prevented this slaughter. So here is this referring to just generally a Nabal, a bad and evil person? Is this referring to that specific Naval? It's unclear, but he says Ein Elohim. Now, Ein Elohim, one understanding is there is no God, which would make sense in terms of the chapters that we've been reading, where people, a lot of these chapters have said there's so much blasphemy and evil talk and terrible behavior, and God doesn't do anything about it. So one way of saying, understanding it, is that there is no God. There's another way of understanding it, just in different places in the Torah, where Elohim also refers to judges, not just God, but judges. The idea of justice, the name Elohim, when referred to God, is referring to God's justice. So, for example, Abraham, the second time that he says his wife is his sister, is with Elimelech, and he says when the king Elimelech said to him, "Why'd you lie and say that this was your sister?" Abraham says, "Ki ein yirat Elohim b'makom hazeh v'araguni al dvar ishti." If I'm getting it correct, right? That there is no there is no rule of law. There's no justice. And you guys, if you would have wanted my wife, you would have just killed me. That's not the way to behave. That's not the way to act. That's not a proper method of doing things. And so Yosef also talks about et Elohim ani yareh to his brothers when he is the viceroy, and they don't know that he is the king of Egypt. And it doesn't seem that he's referring to God. It seems he's referring to the rule of law. Why would he say, "I'm a God-fearing man" to the brothers of to his brothers, long-lost brothers? And so there are many who argue that that's what this means here, that it's not referring specifically to God, but the idea of there's no judgment, there's no justice. Of course, the two are not mutually exclusive, because, again, Elohim refers to the idea of God as the judge. It's not like the Yud Kei Vav Kei, which refers to God as God's role in history. Okay. Long on the first verse, the other ones will be faster. Adonai mishamayim hishkif al bnei adam lirot hayesh maskil doresh et Elohim. God looks down from the heavens and looks upon all men. We've had this phrase a few times in these chapters, bnei adam, all of humanity. And hishkif is a word to that God peers down. God looks from above and is looking and searching. We have this in the Sefer Dvarim, the same word, hashkifa. And God is looking. Is there a man of understanding? Is there somebody who is seeking out God? Again, one of the phrases that we've had over these verses, this idea of doresh, is God searching, is man searching for God. It was said by David before Heschel said it. Hakol sar yachtav ne'elahu, ein oseh tov, ein gam echad. They've all gone astray. they all together have become corrupt. So look at it, it's not just one person, it's a communal effort. Think of the story of Migdal Bavel, for example. There, God looks down and sees man not acting properly. Right here, the people have come together. Together, they have veered from a path that is correct to a path of corruption, and they've done it together. No one is good, not even a one. Pasuk Dalet, Halo yadu kol poale aven, ochle ami lechem, Adonai lo karau. Do not all those who are workers of iniquity. What does it mean, a worker? I guess you're so good at it, you become so talented at that at performing evil. It's like your job. So the workers of iniquity, don't they know that those who ate my people as they would eat bread did not call upon the Lord? What that refers to is, right, the Babylonians or the Assyrians or later the Romans or all of these people who went and attacked Bnei Israel. Eventually, for their destruction of Bnei Israel, they were punished themselves. Their downfalls happened as well. And so they should know that. There's a second way of understanding is that this Ochle Ami Achlu Lechem is not referring to other people, other nations, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, but actually members of the Jewish community who were, eating bread rather than taking care of their people. It was a time of trouble, and what were they doing? Let's drink wine, let's eat meat, for tomorrow we shall die. Hashem lo karo, they should have called out to God. Secondary way, two different ways of understanding that verse is referring to the nations who attacked Israel, and they didn't call out to God, and God will deal with them? Or is it referring to actually leaders and members of Bnei Israel, perhaps the ones who were in charge, the ones in positions of power who said, Ein Elohim, there's no justice, there's no judge, whether it be God or just generally, and they weren't worried. They didn't call out to God. Rather, they were eating and drinking and being merry. Continue in verse Hey, Sham pachadu pachad ki Elohim bedor tzadik. They were in great fear because God is amongst the righteous. We had this word dor yesterday. Yesterday we talked about how it means generation, or it can mean forever. And here, at least in the Bat Mikra, it's translated as a kahal, as a congregation. God is amongst the righteous. Okay. Atzat ani tavishu ki Adonai mach sehu. You will be shamed by your counsel regarding the poor, because God is his refuge. Mi tein mitzion Yeshuat Yisrael. Right? Who from Zion is going to bring the salvation of Israel? B'shuva Adonai shvut amo. When God returns his people. Yagel Yaakov Yismach Yisrael. When God brings his people back, Jacob will rejoice. Israel will be glad. So, right, this is like many of these psalms here in the beginning, a short psalm, and it seems to express the sort of the sadness, the bitterness that there is moral depravity, that everybody has gone together and is acting in an evil fashion, and up to this point, God has not done anything to it. And the Mishorer, the author David, is reflecting the idea is turning to God, not early, but is turning to God and saying, do something about it, God. And at least here, the belief is kind of in like the last verse. The last capital was said a little nicer. And the last capital was, V'ani b'chastecha v'tachti yageli bi bishuatecha, right? I trust in your goodness, God. I trust in your kindness. And here it's said in a slightly different way after, right? Mi tein mitzion Yeshuat Yisrael. When it says sort of sarcastically, when I should say sarcastically, but when the salvation of Israel will come from Zion, like it's going to happen. It seems to be asked as a question, but it's not understood as a question. It's being said as sort of certainty. It's certainly going to happen from that. God will come from Zion and will restore his people back to Israel. So another chapter that is within the context of what we've had up to this point. Next chapter will be different. Of evil, wickedness is around. Nothing seems to be happening about it, but we turn to God, the Mishorer, on a personal level, whether it's on a communal level, with the belief and the knowledge that God will intervene And as we said a couple of chapters ago, it's only adir, right? God is only seen as adir bamarom, right? God is only seen as glorious when there is justice, when kindness and goodness are pervasive on this world, not when the wicked are able to be so successful.